everyone, this is John, your host on the Prepared Mind channel. What are we talking about here? We're talking about shit hitting the fan. We're talking about things that are going to lead us to shit hitting the fan. We like to talk about the need to prepare. Today, some interesting news has occurred. Right? I got the news right here. Well, this is the scotch, and this is the news. That would be a Glenfiddich right there that's delicious. All right. So the news I have is rather positive. At least I like to think it's positive. I always wonder when we get positive news, especially from Washington, D.C., I like to ask myself, is it really good news? Or is there some kind of a rider attached or some kind of doublespeak that's attached to some proposed legislation? Or some legislation that's being discussed in committee. Now in California, in case you're not aware or your state's different, what they'll do is they'll propose a law or a referendum for us to vote on, and it'll say, new law to raise taxes to pay for a bridge. And you sign, you literally vote yes or no, and whatever you're voting on is exactly the opposite of what the literal plain English means. Right, you can pass a law here in California that you vote on that says forces state to spend tax money collected on gas taxes on roads and highways. It says that. It seems clear as day, plain, right, as the news in front of you. And when you pass the law, it actually says inside the law that they can spend the money however they want, even though you just signed a piece of legislation or voted for it where the title said forces them to spend on roads. And in fact, it just goes into a general fund. They do shit like that out here all the time, I swear to God. And I wonder, is it just this ridiculous state or is it the rest of the country? And I know Washington is guilty of this sort of thing. So let's get into the news story, which appears on its face to be good for America, good for us. So let's get into it. House panel to weigh bill expanding gun rights. House in Washington, the Associated Press, right? House Republicans moved forward on legislation to expand gun owner rights. This is the first gun-related measure since mass shootings in Las Vegas and Texas killed more than 80 people. It's interesting to note that the first legislation to make it to committee since the mass shooting in Vegas and then in Texas would be pro-gun legislation. Now, the last time we had Congress up in arms and having committee meetings and throwing fireworks and ticker tape parades for cameras as they marched them in was after the Sandy Hook shooting, where they went after assault weapons big time. They haven't been able to get that kind of steam since then. Not even after Vegas. Not even after the shooting in Texas. Not even after the school shootings in California. In fact, it's interesting to me, and I'm highly suspicious, that after all of that, right, all these shootings that have gone on, there's been no huge committee hearings on banning guns. Right? In fact, this appears that House Republicans are doing something conservative. And they haven't done anything conservative, as far as I'm concerned, since Trump has been elected. All they've done is get in his way. So I'm wondering, why are they wanting to do this now? Well, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth, and let's take a look at what they're saying. Right? The Judiciary Committee, that's a pretty important committee, is scheduled to vote on Wednesday on an NRA-supported bill that would allow a gun owner with a state-issued concealed carry permit to carry a handgun in any state that allows concealed weapons. Now, let's look at this on its face. I have a driver's license in California. It allows me to drive in all 50 states. In fact, if I can afford to rent a car in any other country, anywhere in the world, I got a driver's license. They seem to accept that, and that works. More people are killed with cars than guns every year. Fact. Right? So, why does Nevada have to accept a California license? Why does Utah have to accept a Nevada license? Well, they call it the Equal Protection Clause, right? One state, another state, it doesn't matter. We all have an understanding of things like the need to drive. Things that are universal, like cargo's on the right side of the road, steering wheel's on the left, etc., etc. From state to state, should it matter, right, if a person carries a gun? Now, this is a simple argument I'm going to make. You don't shoot anyone unless your life is threatened, period. If you have to pull your gun out and or use it, of course you're going to have to wait around for police to show up, and they're going to have lots of questions for you to answer. Those are pretty universal things. They're pretty easy to understand. And I think that everyone that has a concealed weapons permit can be brought up to speed pretty quick on understanding the rules of other states. So, if we can have equal protection for every other right, why not guns? And I think that's where they're going. It seems to be common sense gun legislation. Dianne Feinstein, put that in your punch bowl and drink it, you witch. Okay, so the reciprocity, meaning back and forth, measure would allow gun owners to travel freely between states without worrying about conflicting state laws or onerous civil suits. Right? So this idea of carry falls under the general philosophical concept of we have the right to protect ourselves, and that includes the right to carry and bear arms. The Judiciary Panel is also expected to consider legislation to strengthen the FBI database of prohibited gun buyers. That's where I go, okay, there's a little rider. What does that really mean, and how is it really going to be written into the statutory language? How is it going to be interpreted in the Code of Federal Regulations? Those are where they stick us with the sneaky little lawyer shit. It's where I get really suspicious. Right? Despite calls by Democrats for tighter gun control, Congress has taken no steps on guns in the weeks following all those shootings. Right? Coming down the line, House Speaker Paul Ryan said the Texas shooting showed the need to enforce current gun laws. So I just skipped through, just visually looking, a bunch of quotes from various, let's call them lawmakers, even though they don't seem to follow laws very well. In fact, I would like to point to Senator Al Frankenstein, that particular creep, right? He's got himself in hot water because apparently he didn't understand that you can't grope women, kiss women, and foist yourself upon them without violating someone else's rights. And he's so qualified at his understanding of basic human decency that he was elected, I believe, representative and now Senator, U.S. Senator Al Franken. And the Democrats are circling the wagons to protect this clown. You know, so when they say stuff, I can't believe them. They don't apply logic or reason. They're complete retards. They have agendas. That's all they care about. And same with the Republicans on the other side. I have tons of problems with them. They're for this and against that, depending on who the president is. It's really bothersome as a citizen. What I'm hoping is that this law that they're talking about, basically a concealed weapons permit reciprocity law, it should unify all the 50 states that allow guns, right? It should unify or codify them all the same so that there is a simple, easy way to get through this, right? It's pretty simple, right? The driving laws are all pretty much the same. So why shouldn't the gun laws? Why can't they be? You know, this idea of equal protection by all states, right? You can't violate my rights in another state that are granted to me in California, and California can't violate someone else's rights from another state. They're all pretty much universal, these things that we call rights and privileges, of course. After the Las Vegas shooting, Trump and White House aides said it was inappropriate to consider a policy response while people were still grieving. This speaks to me about the PC-ness, the political correct crap that's going on. Just because a policeman was shot, for example, doesn't mean policemen everywhere take the day off, right? We go about our business. I understand tragedy. Maybe in the town where the church shooting was, they're not going to discuss it for a day. Let them not discuss it. In Washington, get off your asses and do your job. In fact, I think that the people in Texas might be more inclined to say, you should be talking about that in Washington while we grieve, because when we're done grieving, we're going to want some fucking answers. Right? And it was, in fact, private citizens, John Q. Public, but private, free individuals that put an end to the massacre that was happening in Texas. That was just, when I heard that, it made me very happy that a regular citizen was able to put an end to that by using guns, by using equal to and superior force to the person that was doing the badness, right? A bipartisan bill on background checks failed in the Senate 4 years ago. And since then, Republicans have usually pointed to mental health legislation when questioned about the appropriate congressional response to gun violence. At the very end, they bring up this mental health issue again, this angle. And in the realm of my right to keep and bear arms, my God-given right to life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. And I always like to throw property in there because it's very important. This concept that you can waive or lose a right based on your, what they perceive to be mental illness. This very dangerous ground that they tread on. Now, in times past, to understand the concept of mental illness, you could not convict someone of a crime if they were incompetent, crazy, right, or underage. Right? Children couldn't be tried for murder. If you were retarded or mentally handicapped, you don't have the same rights as all the other adults. And if you're crazy, a lunatic, you did not have the rights of everyone else. To me, that almost makes sense, right? It does. It makes sense. But to just claim arbitrarily, and by arbitrary, I mean a doctor can stand there and say, that person has a mental disorder, therefore they shouldn't have the right to have a gun. You see, here we get into what's known as a political test. And this is something the Founding Fathers talked about quite a bit. And I believe it's covered in the Federalist Papers. Political tests. That is, someone at the political level decides what people can and can't do based on their criteria that they set. Because some jackass has MD after his name, Dr. So-and-so, and he says that person's crazy. And I know because I'm an expert. We get into trouble. That's when we get into trouble, when they bring out experts and then claim that the expert knows, and the expert knows better than all of us. And the expert's opinion, therefore, trumps my right. Now, to determine whether someone or not has a mental illness, right, there ought to be a medical test, not a political test. And that's where the two have the divide. That's why they can't seem to get this idea together, but they're trying and they're going to continue to try. And we, as free Americans, need to continue to use pro-gun political action committees, lobbying groups like the NRA, Guns of America, etc., to make sure our voices are heard in the state capitals and in Washington, D.C. Right? Because they're trying to do something right here, it seems like. They're trying to get a universally accepted rule that if you've got a permit in one state, it's good for all states. But it also bothers me when they say, well, we need to get this other thing in here that says, well, if we have one little piece of information from this group or that doctor, now you are nationally recognized as being incapable. Right? It's very scary business. Now, do I like the idea of foreign nationals on our soil with guns? No, I don't. I don't like that at all. They're not citizens. They weren't born here. They don't believe in America. They believe in whatever they believe in before they got here. You know, it's hard to trust or understand them. They used to have to earn citizenship, and that took years, and that took testing and an understanding. Right? So, very interesting stuff. As gun owners, as a gun owner, I'm excited by the legislation. As a concealed weapons permit holder, I'm excited by this idea that Washington is addressing this. As it is, I can go into 39 different states carrying my concealed weapon 100% legally. The only difference between what they're talking about doing in Washington and what I have now is I'm missing 11 states. And in addition to that, I'm required, if I go to another state, to understand their gun laws and make sure I'm good, right? It's that way with everything in life, though. I don't walk into, say, Idaho, the state of Idaho, and go up and punch someone in the fucking mouth, and then say, geez, I didn't know that's how it worked. I'm from California. You know, I thought I could just punch people in Idaho. No. There's just basic common sense that seems to be at play in all these situations. You know, anyways, let's continue with some business, if we shall. Legislation. I kind of like the idea of them getting some common sense in Washington, but again, I'm just suspicious, very suspicious. Now, as you guys know, I'm a multifaceted human being. I have other interests besides just prepping. I've got kids, I've got a day job or 3, I'm a general contractor, I do a lot of different things. I have different hobbies. I've kind of invited a few others onto this channel from time to time, one of them being conspiracy stuff. Moon landings, UFOs, you know, oddities about what's on the ground here, Antarctica, etc., etc. It's just fun. It's a way for me to relax, to get away, to consider the possibilities of there being information out there, the world and universe not being what Washington, D.C. says it is. Right? So there's this channel. It's very popular. It's called Secure Team 10. And it's this guy that does UFO videos. And this morning he did a video about another ex-Marine who likes photography. And he likes to film the moon. His channel was called Crow 777. His channel's been removed. Terminated. Off of YouTube. Terminated, absolutely. Why? Well, he had this thing called the lunar wave. Essentially, it looked like the moon. Imagine the big round moon. And it had like this line, this distortion wave that went through it. And he called it the lunar wave and said, what's this? And it prompted a lot of discussion by professional astronomers, amateur astronomers, physicists. It was a marvelous, interesting discovery. And then he and others have filmed it happening again and again. It almost looks like a heat wave moving past the moon. Something as simple, ubiquitous as that was terminated. It was grounds for terminating his whole channel. And I thought, geez, what is wrong with filming the moon and seeing some sort of scientific anomaly and then publishing it on YouTube? The reason I'm bringing that up here is YouTube is not just censoring guns. They're not just censoring right-wing political news people. They're not just censoring people with social concerns about our nation. Right? They're not just censoring one group. They seem to be censoring all of us. They seem to be taking channels off here and there. Now, my concern would be great. It would be huge, right, if they just canceled all of us at once that they didn't like. But I think they've decided which groups need to go and who to get off, and they're going to slowly pick us off one by one. One by one, they're going to just slowly take us down. One here, one there, gone, gone, gone. And pretty soon you're not going to be left on YouTube with anything. Now, of course, here we are on Patreon. Safe and sound on Patreon. But over on YouTube, right? And I just use YouTube to store information now. And I keep backup copies of everything, and we can publish them anywhere, store them anywhere. So we are safe, right? But I think what they're realizing and recognizing is that the mass social media platform that YouTube is, they're going to change. Probably destroy it at some point, but they're, ding-dongs. But what's interesting is it's everything that they want to take off. I think they, meaning the powers that be, have realized that you and I having a voice is very dangerous. And you and I having the ability to search out what we want to hear and learn is dangerous. They used to tell us what we wanted. ABC, NBC, CBS, and PBS. Right? You want some education? There you go. Get some PBS stuff. Right? They didn't like losing that control with us. We've gotten out of hand. We're a bunch of crazy cats running around and they're trying to herd us back. But this idea of censorship, that not only are they going to try and stop me from speaking, but they're going to try and keep you from hearing, is something we all need to be extremely aware of. So if you have a favorite channel, not just this one, but any favorite channel, try and understand what's going on with them. Follow them if they go someplace else to the best of your ability, because we don't want voices being silenced. Those voices that are disappearing on YouTube, there's some reason that they don't want us to be heard. Right? They've messed with me a number of times here on The Prepared Mind. A number of times. Luckily, they haven't struck me out. Other people, they just 1, 2, 3 them right there in one day and they're gone. There's a reason for this. You know, talking about stuff like this, possibly, you know, I think we should all have guns. I would feel really good if I went to a seminar, a convention, to hear a speaker, and I knew that 80% of the people in the audience were carrying. I would feel extremely safe. Extremely. Because the person that's there to break the law, say to assassinate a speaker or shoot up the crowd, they're already thinking wrong, and they're already going to bring a gun and try doing that. The fact that 80% of the people there have a gun also, and they're going to take that person out, tends to act as a major deterrence to crime. Now let's, while we're back to this, they don't want me to say shit like that because it affects you. You get to think about it and make the decision. What is right in your life? Because I only talk about things from my perspective, what works in my life. Maybe you'll come to the same conclusion, right? The other good thing about this is, say you're, you know, California's a massive state, right? To go across it, to get into it, right? If shit hits the fan, and I'm halfway across the country, and I've got to get back home, and I know I could only have a couple of days to get there, going from state to state and not having any form of protection really affects my desire to travel. I imagine it's the same if you're in a state and you've got to, say, cross through New York to get somewhere else, or cross through Illinois, and you just say, fuck it, I'm leaving my gun at home because I'm not allowed to carry in these other states. Now, that has handicapped your ability. It has lessened your ability to make it back in an emergency situation or a shit hits the fan. There could be massive terror anywhere, and it's going to affect your ability to travel safely. And traveling, locomotion, is a God-given right. Once again, it is your right to travel. It is your right to protect yourself. And it's going to be nice to see them if they can get this done so that we can safely, without any question, any doubt, carry what we consider to be sufficient means of protection with us so that when we travel, we know we can get back safe as a prepper. It also gives us a measure of confidence in areas of the country where there's states are packed together and you drive through 2 or 3 states at a time. It gives you a measure of confidence, right? That you can, more often than not, carry your gun and get used to carrying a gun. Get used to the idea that you have to think, if I'm in a situation, do I avoid it? Do I stand up and protect myself? Do I help others? Do I run like hell? Those are all important questions when you have a gun, when you have the ability to defend yourself. But when you don't have the ability to defend yourself, you're left with no alternative but to run every time. And sometimes running doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't help you at all, right? If your only place is to run into a corner or into a building, right? And there's gunmen everywhere else. Kind of like that mosque down there in the Middle East, where they had bombs go off in the mosque, so people said, fuck it, I'm running outside. I don't want to get blown up, and they got shot outside. They had no recourse, no way to defend themselves. Here in America, we believe in self-defense, and having legislation that tells us it doesn't matter where you're at in our country. You have the right to protect yourself, and we're not going to take away your tools to do so. It's very important. So in parting, I'm going to recommend, call your congressman and massage his ego and tell him how he's done a great job and you expect him to support this legislation if it makes it out of committee. If your congressman's on the Judiciary Committee, massage his ego and tell him what a great job he's done and you want him to support it. For the reasons I've talked about, as well as reasons you have on your own. And it could just be, we've got the Second Amendment, stupid fucks. Pass the law. It's so simple, right? It just makes sense to these logical-minded, rational-thinking, right-wing lunatics out here. That's what the left think we are, is lunatics. I'm not the one saying men and women should use the same restroom. And if you want, call yourself a tree or a dog or a signpost, and people have to recognize that you're a tree or a dog or a signpost. That, to me, seems a little bit screwy. But anyways, my type of thinking, hey, if other rights are universally protected from state to state, and other privileges as well, then why not one of the most important, which is the right to protect your own life? Anyways, yes, call your congressman. I can call my congressman, but when it comes to calling the U.S. senators, as a Californian, I'm shit out of luck. Anyways, if we get more of this stuff as we can, while we can, it's fantastic. It's fantastic to get these sorts of things in writing. Right, in writing. Remember, chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. You take it easy. And one more thing. If they pass this sort of legislation, it's going to make it a lot easier, is it not? It's going to make it a lot easier if you live in a state that does not like issuing concealed weapons permits. If you get one in another state, it applies to your state from that point on and that point forward. As in, I have an Arizona state concealed weapons permit that's good for all states except California and 10 others. Isn't that funny? It's not good in California. But my California permit's good in California, and my Arizona state is good. So if I got the Arizona one, because I lived in a state that was had the reciprocity with Arizona, then it would work under this new proposed legislation in California, in New York, in Illinois, in states where it's difficult, in other words, to get a concealed weapons permit. And when they get this done, if they get it done, cross your fingers, those states will have to fall under the Equal Protection Clause. That is, no state can deny a right that all the other states accept. And I know I'm paraphrasing and maybe pushing the envelope a little with that statement, but so be it. No state can say you can't drive a car and then tell me I can't drive a car in their state. They're out of their frickin' mind. I think it's that fundamental, that simple to understand, the right to self-preservation. Okay, guys, be cool. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi, and we'll talk tomorrow. Playtime is over. Get your Prepared Mind merchandise to show your support for the channel, stop censorship, and to tell YouTube they can smoke it. Get prepared now.